Okie dokie. So, morning everybody. We might have a few others join us because we did have a handful more that should be online. Welcome to the first in our series of webinars for members. This particular subject, cybersecurity and operational technology, is a fast-moving subject, and it was something that has been identified through the technical working group of BCIA. It's been something that's been on their agenda for some time, and it was agreed that we would look to hold a webinar and potentially, in addition to the webinar, provide some supporting materials as well. It's apparent from the members that sit within the technical working group that they had a number of concerns and queries that were being raised in relation to cybersecurity for projects and that handover of projects and the best practice sitting around project delivery, as well as their own business and their responsibilities and any liabilities. So hopefully we'll be discussing that and a whole lot more today. It is a webinar for you, I think both John and Ben are happy for you just to raise your hand and ask questions and interrupt throughout. It's really not a problem to do that. Do just raise your digital hand if you don't mind. And if we could ask you to just stay on mute until you're asking a question, just so that we don't get any background noise for the recording, that would be brilliant. As I've mentioned before, this is being recorded. It will be available on the members area following this. So without any further ado, I'm going to introduce you to the speakers. They're the subject experts on this. They're going to do some brief introductions of themselves before we'll move into John doing a short sort of context setting, and Ben doing the bulk of the expertise area, I suppose. And then we'll have some time for questions and answers and general discussion at the end. But as I've mentioned, if you've got any questions, pop them in the chat or raise your hand. They're happy to do that throughout. John, do you want to quickly introduce yourself first?
John Hamilton, Smart Environments. Been working in the building control systems for about 25 years. I'm ex-Honeywell, I'm ex-Schneider, ex-IBM. My last role in Honeywell was I was the cybersecurity OT business practice leader for Europe, with a team of colleagues working at securing the OT environment, and you'll hear that name mentioned many times today. OT technology, operational technology. Ben, over to yourself.
Thank you, John. So good morning, everyone. I'm Ben White. I am Fortinet's UK and Ireland Operational Technology Business Development Manager. It's a very long title, shorter than my name, longer than my name, should I say. I joined Fortinet over a year ago in March last year. Prior to that, similar to John, I've come from an industrial control system vendor background working on cybersecurity. So I worked for Emerson Automation Solutions, and I was their UKI cyber BDM. Prior to that, I've worked for a system integrator, and I've worked across multiple different sectors, not directly on building automation or building controls, but in environments where building automation and building controls are used and are required. So nice to meet you all today, and hopefully you will find the presentations insightful.
Thank you very much, Ben. I'm just going to share my screen. So hopefully everybody will see a screen of mine now appear.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. All right. So I just make sure. So I mentioned the word operational technology, and it encompasses all of the built world, where we've got building controls in the space of a building environment. So on the bottom right there, BMS, HVAC, fire, and you'll see lots of elements that all come together, and we're seeing a significant step change within the built environment over the last decade or so, where we've moved from what I would call an analog age into a digital age. We're now communicating these systems via a form of networking and centralized control. So leading into this quite quickly, why target operational technology systems? I'm going to let you read this. These slides will be available to the collective group. it's, important elements that point out, the lifespan of OT systems, operational technology systems, is much longer than IT systems. We keep a mobile phone for probably 3-4 years. We keep a laptop probably for no longer. So they get refreshed and updated in terms of their approach to security and the means and technology of those security elements within those systems. So there's a lot of damage that can be done within a network system, and I'm going to point out some of the areas where we see problems. This isn't all about, let's say, we need to put an antivirus in there, we need a firewall. Those are mandatory elements, but there's also best practices around maybe password management, how the system's designed, and the contents of some of the systems, and we'll touch on some of those bits as we go further forward. There's lots of increasing threats, and on the left-hand side, there's everything from the professional hackers to denial of services, and right at the bottom, disgruntled employees probably make up at least 5% of all cyber breaches. So there's many elements that are potentially going to cause a business a problem. This is one of my go-to slides when I start talking about operational technology, and it's important in many ways to get people to understand there is subtle differences between what we call IT systems, and that's everything's happening on your laptop, and with the common area that we share quite often now is ICT, information communication technology. That's the transport layer. So looking at operational technology, what does it do? It does things, controls things, it monitors things. And to put that into context, if I was lucky enough to take you to Wembley and we heard the announcement, calling Mr. Green, calling Mr. Green, calling Mr. Green, that's a distress call from the fire marshal on the top desk, making a transmission system over the PA system saying he's got a fire, he's got a problem, he's going to go into evacuation. That's telling all of his agents around the building go into a preparation mode. Now, Mr. IT man would like to protect that data. He stores data, he manipulates data. He's not going to really want to transmit that until he's happy, in essence. So there's some subtle differences between OT systems and IT systems. I touched on, we see a BMS system going into a building. It may be there for 10, 15, 20 years. And one of the problems we quite often see is the platform it sits on may be also the same age. So it's not uncommon to go into a building and see a server that the platform sits on running on Windows 2004, 2008, 2010. All of those platforms are obsolete. We cannot patch and update those platforms. Some may say that's not a problem, but if they aren't connected to the network, or there's ways of getting onto a network that services that area, we may well have a catastrophic failure as such. So I've broken this slide down into a number of areas. Performance criteria. Yeah, we're low bandwidth, but we need real-time information. We cannot delay that transmission. So calling Mr. Green, it must go. Availability. That transmission must go. It has to be available. So bandwidth must be secured for that type of application. We need to look at the risks. And look also significantly at how those systems are going to be maintained. Now, where do the risks come from? Quite often in a lot of the buildings today, we see common usage of networks. So we'll have what I call an OT network, and that may transmit via the IT site network, the ICT site network, and then out. So we want a firewall that needs to be configured correctly. We want separation firewalls between the networks. Within that network for our OT systems, we quite often will see switches. Those switches need to be managed. I don't want a switch where it can be, and content can be unplugged and something else be plugged in. I want the switch to know that that element that's plugged into it is the right element, and if it's disturbed, nothing else can be effectively connected to the network. We see big issues with things like USB sticks. Sure way of being able to get a virus into any business, go into their canteen and leave 20, 30 USB sticks. Help yourself, guys. they're free. There needs to be policies around the USB ports on whether it be a server or laptops and various other bits and pieces. We see, just like your phones, we get an update probably every 6 to 8 weeks on your Apple phone saying update to the latest software version. Occasionally that creates a problem, but we also need to to do those updates to ensure that the safety elements are there. About two years ago, there was a log.j4 script text issue around passwords that many operational technology systems had failures with. I won't name the names, but there was quite a few big names in the industry that had issues where there was effectively a bypass of security that could be achieved. So this is the area that we work in. We also need to consider the end devices and the field devices, which may not be our own, but that of somebody else. So when we look at the design, your responsibility may well be that you've got everything from the air handling unit all the way through to your own software system install. So be aware of possibly the policies that you need to flow down into your supply chain around those products. So one of my big projects was providing the site-wide security on a major rail system that goes through central London. Put some context into some of the elements that will be in your sort of levels. So you'll have a level 3 operational and control element workstations, and I've just listed down some of the elements that could be there within those elements. So we've got firewalls between the zone separation, firewalls where we're going out into the big wide world. We're going to have antivirus in all of the server applications, locked and managed switches, collating that information that comes through from the field devices before they go into the servers. We can put in additional defeating devices, and this is really where Ben's expertise and the product set that in his company and others, but they're very much, I would say, a very good best of breed one-shop element for a lot of this. So we can then start monitoring the network traffic, and we can put in denial of service systems and honeypots and all sorts of things to provide additional protection for the networks. And you'll see right at the bottom under 9, we can put decoy elements in, so we can mimic an element so that we can make something like a honeypot for somebody to go into rather than into a server as such. So cybersecurity, incident management, there's a whole raft of things. And again, I'm going to pass this back over to probably Ben's space, or we can bring this back up at the end of the session around observe, investigate, and resolve. A lot of us will be required to look at how we hand a project over and look at the best practices around providing a safe and secure network provision. This is probably one of my go-to applications for cybersecurity. This is an American institute, NIST. The guide is 800-53. It's very well suited to the building environment. So it goes across many elements of the setup. So you'll see at the top incident response, maintenance, and all the way through. Training and awareness for this particular customer scored 0. So it would identify the weaknesses and the gaps within the environment. So here the customer scored a score out of 5, 2.34. There's obviously some rooms for improvement. We go across to the line graph on the left-hand side, and continuity could be something that we could look at. System protection. What do we need to do? So I will go to Ben. What else do I need to put into this environment to strengthen and harden my environment? You'll see quite often in a lot of PQQs that come out today, I ISA, IEC 64443 as a standard, and that will go through a lot of the methodology required to provide system protection and your approach to the environment. I'm just going to go back to this slide here. So for me, a lot of the work that we need to do is a cyber assessment of the OT systems. If we're going into a retro refit, we're going to start off with a secure by design, build, connect, and then maintenance. What is the maintenance strategy around the PCs that your systems sit on? They just don't want to be installed and left forever. They will have, I hope, an antivirus in there and firewalls connected. They are quite often a subscription system. So do look at the maintenance regimes around best practice there to ensure that those systems can't be compromised just by a lack of maintenance. The bottom bullet point there, disaster recovery. Cybersecurity is one of those things. It's not if I get attacked, but when. How are you going to mitigate the risks to your business, or more importantly to your client's business, should those systems be taken down? So putting in a disaster recovery system, a backup, right? It may be when the engineer goes in to service the BMS, he takes the system back up. Great. Some systems will have more frequent changes and therefore need to have a different approach to the system backup. It's not just the seasonal checks that the engineer goes in to do a system backup. So if the system's taken down, can I put a new PC in there, load the system back up and get the site running again? Back in COVID, a major issue there was to get a new server was taking 16 to 20 weeks. That's a business out of operation in that particular environment for quite some time. Or you've got to strip and reconfigure that PC that was there. So that's really my introduction, and hopefully by the end of this and more in-depth content about the elements within cybersecurity, Ben should be able to relay to you. I've just put a number of questions that I would typically potentially ask to my customers, or how we might look at some of the considerations for their business. Before I hand over, I don't know if there's any questions, or if there's questions, they can certainly wait to the end of the process. Ben, I think it's over to you. So I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay. Thank you for that, John. All right. So move this back over here. And same question again. People can see my screen? Yeah. Great stuff. Okay. So thank you for inviting me to present today to yourselves. When I spoke to John, I was asked a lot of questions and I had to take a lot of thought on what I was going to present today. So what I've done is I've gone around having a look at what is going to be best practice and just some, in my opinion, things that I've seen in industry, and also some passing on some information to make it more aware. So OT, cybersecurity and building automation, quick question, just raise hands, nod on the screen. Does anybody know of Fortinet? Okay, that's fine. So best place to start then is to just give you a quick overview of who Fortinet are. So Fortinet is one of the largest cybersecurity companies in the world, easy for me to say. Founded in October 2000, Sunnyvale, California, by two brothers, Ken Z and Michael Z. And we have been the driving force or evolution behind cybersecurity, convergence of networking and security. We've got a global customer base of around 750,000 plus customers. Billings last year in the range of 6.4 billion. And the interesting fact that I like, two interesting facts are, we are pretty much the biggest global firewall provider, which is why everybody assumes Fortinet just does firewalls, which I'll show you in a minute we don't. And also this investment piece here. Circa £2.5 billion has been invested from Fortinet into their own technology since 2017. Fortinet haven't grown through acquisition, they have grown through their own growth and through their own R&D. And that was one of the things that really shocked me when I started to do my research on them for actually doing my presentation back to the business in my final stage of employment with them. And seeing the level of investment that Fortinet did equaling the level of investment that a company like Emerson does was just for one area of their business. This was focused in Emerson across multiple different areas. So they were a true cybersecurity company. They were leading the way, and I wanted to be a part of that, especially for operational technology. So what do Fortinet do for OT, IoT, or edge security? Well, the easiest way of putting it is that we have the broadest platform in cybersecurity and over 50 tightly integrated product lines. If you can think of a cybersecurity solution, put 40 in front of it, and we've got the product for it. Our marketing and product team have probably the easiest job ever to be able to name a product. 40 EDR, 40 gate, 40 switch, 40 phone, 40 CTV. It's just got 40 in front of it. But we focus on 3 pillars: secure networking, secure operations, and unified SASE approach. Secure networking around network firewalling, wireless, wired LANs, security operations, SIEM, SOAR, EDR, and unified SASE is securing the edge. So SD-WAN, secure edge, single vendor SASE, zero trust network access. All of this comes into the one platform approach that Fortinet offer, and that's underpinned by the Fortinet security fabric. So if you take those 3 pillars, converge, consolidate, and consume, we have one operating system that our customers use, which is the world's worst tagline for a single pane of management, because nobody likes single pane, but that's what it means. Single pane of management of all our solutions in one area. What is driving our OS and driving our technology is AI driven, FortiCloud ability. So we are point to platform. So you can think of securing the IO points area control system environment up to a platform, whether that's the BMS platform, the business platforms, or the cloud platform. We have started to do different ways of procuring. A lot of customers have cloud commit. So we have a 40 points offering, which allows you to go to marketplace and procure licenses, VMs, what you need. Hardware is still the old traditional route, going to a distributor. FortiGuard Labs, that's where we get all our threat intelligence. We can update it, and we do all our intelligent work that helps us to grow our OT security platform. So Fortinet, although we have specific OT industry products, i.e. the form factors, all of our solutions have an OT awareness. So from 40 Deceptor, Honeybox to 40 gates and 40 switches, we have an OT capability built into those technologies. So enterprise level cybersecurity built for an OT environment. And anything we don't have, so like on one of John's architectures, where you saw Nozomi potentially as the asset discovery solution, our ecosystem, we have tightly integrated solutions with those asset discovery providers to be able to enhance what you are going to be able to do with the data and how you can act on that through a 40 gate solution or a Fortinet solution. IoT and OT security, it's one of the fastest growing areas in currently in the business and going to continue to that. That's not just obviously through what we already have, but what through the businesses want to do now by getting the data rich environment and getting all that data out to be able to make business informed decisions. My opinion, and shared with the business, the only way that we're going to be able to secure most of these IoT and OT devices is by securing the network. Building that defensible network, building that defensible architecture so that you can provide secure connectivity to those devices, especially when most of those devices are going to need secured agentless connectivity. So manufacturing, connected cars, healthcare, life sciences, we can provide that secure networking. Majority of those industries we already are. And then obviously through IoT and OT from FortiGuard Labs, our specific subscription offerings, we can then help to be able to secure all of those devices from the connection point rather than the agent itself. You look at an OT security platform that extends that enterprise level industrial class security. It extends it to factories, plants, buildings, and remote locations. A very simplistic Purdue reference model or normative architecture. Everyone aware of Purdue and what it is and why it's used in operational technology? It's not a trick question. I had to learn it at some point as well. Okay, so Purdue is just a normative architecture. Put a load of different people in a room from OT and they will all have an argument about it. Okay, because some will say it's a reference architecture, some will say it's the bane of the industry because everybody's using it as thinking it's a secure architecture. It is meant as a simplistic way to allow people to come together to understand the layers of a network and those layers of a network to a business function and what sits in them. And as you can see here, very simplistically, level 4 cloud, level 3 enterprise. Converged IT/OT is a DMZ between your IT networks and your operational technology networks. Everything that then sits under the DMZ, whether you call that 2.5, 3.5, whatever, is the cyber physical systems where the stuff happens, where the product is made, where the HVAC is made to be kept going and cool, where the generators sit that are going to be there to in case the main switchgear fails and you'll fall over to it. What we're saying is that our solutions can broach all of the Purdue model from enterprise level. So we've started to look at the networking approach and we've started to build those industrial class solutions in a rugged form, DIN rail mountable, switch mountable, can use DC power. We then have a zero trust approach because we know that not only is the customer, but their suppliers are looking for access into those systems. So from building automation, you might have contractors who are offering predictive maintenance or remote services to negate the need for them to be the costly resource that has to go on site to fix a probably not so costly issue. Therefore, they want to get remote access now. ZTNA is that approach. Security operations, the data or the log information that's in that environment is wanting to be then consumed now by our SOCs. So we're able to bring that information out. We can put it into our analyzer technology and then pass that out into your IT SOC. So you don't need to start opening lots of holes in OT. Yes, John?
I was just going to say, if anybody's got issues with some of the acronyms, so SOC, Security Operations Center, we're littered with them in our industry. So by all means, shout out.
Apologies.
That's all right.
Should have said there should have been an acronym amnesty at the start of this. Yes, it does. You completely forget that the audience you're talking to just assumes what all these acronyms are. So yeah, ZTNA, Zero Trust Network Access, SOC, Security Operations Center. So if you have an IT or a managed service offering for a security operations center, Analyzer can start to consolidate the connectivity in the OT arena, bring it into one central location as a data aggregator, and then pass that information out, whilst also allowing you, the owner, to analyze that information as well and to act on it, and then look to be able to do some reactive or proactive approaches to your security in the OT environment. AI threat intelligence, so you get enterprise level IDS, antivirus scanning, and so on, but then you get the OT specifics, i.e. John had one on a particular slide that said BACnet insecure by design, and I'll touch that on in a minute. We have the BACnet protocol within our OT subscription service where you can do message layer inspection on that and then be able to bring that out, bring it into Analyzer and see what's happening on that network around that information. And as I touched on briefly, anything that we don't have with regards to things like asset discovery, that's where we work with the technology vendors to bring that into our solutions for you. So you have that consolidated cybersecurity platform. So let's have a look at a few of the industry issues. So around securing operational technology as an industry in general, we've gone out and we have done some research and we see 6 general themes around issues. Most industrial control systems lack that security by design and are sensitive to change. John's touched on it. We all know in the room, if we need to make a patch to a control system or to our building management system, somebody will go, not yet, not yet, not yet. Let's plan it in, let's do it. So we can't react straight away like we can in an IT environment where we just have to click the button and say your laptop's going to shut down, make sure you save everything. That can't happen. But also when we talk about security by design and lack of it, the company that I work for, Emerson, in 2019, only then were the first industrial DC, distributed control system vendor, to have a platform that could be secure by design to an industry known standard. So that was 2019, 5 years ago. So from 5 years on now, if a customer chose to have that and then chose to pay extra for the cybersecurity, they would have a starting place. But if you think about it, control systems didn't just start being installed in 2019. That's where we have the insecure by design, because we have all the hereditary, obsolete, unsupported platforms that we need to find solutions for now. We talk about the attack surface for those physical assets as expanding and the dependence on air gap protection is diminishing. I don't think air gap has ever been there. I just think it's been temporary disconnection, in my opinion, because as John's shown, and as we all know, USBs were brought in to be able to allow patches to be passed from IT down into OT. Floppy disks at one point might have been used. There is a temporary disconnect. At some point, there will be a connection made, whether that is a continuous connection or just a temporary connection. Digital transformation initiatives are driving IT/OT network convergence. You might have buildings that have very high energy usage, and your insurer now is wanting to see how you're going to improve that energy usage to be able to reduce your premiums. Somebody comes along and says, we've got a sensor that can tell you what all your assets are doing, what they're currently burning. We can send this into a cloud environment and then do some business analytics to show you how you can improve. This is where digital transformation is directly and indirectly impacting OT, because you're getting different sets of information that might contradict what the control system is saying, and then you can question the integrity and what are you doing. We've got that increasing adoption of new technologies, 5G, IoT, and cloud, which has taken us away from the piece of wire that connects everything now. It's cheaper to put a 5G connection in than it is to run a cable from part A of plant to part B of plant. So we're going to look at a mobile private network. How do we secure that with OT? That's again where our OT protocols and our solutions are able to help, whether it's a VM, the hybrid approach, it's an on-prem solution, or it's cloud hosted. Remote access, I touched on it. You're looking at your operators. Take in the instance of COVID, we had a lot of people who had to go and work from home, which meant we started to poke a lot of holes in firewalls to give people access to control systems or to the OT environment. How many people do you think have gone back and retrospectively looked if those firewalls still have the holes in them? I'd probably say it's 50-50 that they're still there. Yes, John.
I was going to add a scenario there. COVID is classic. I was working on a government building in Liverpool where the CCTV provider put an open view platform in so the engineer could work from home. That was the route in to disable the BMS systems. So it's not just there, the faults could be there from the commissioning element, but we're also seeing elements of vulnerability occurring during the operation phase. So just be mindful how the systems could be breached, and an open view platform to gain access via the firewall can be a significant problem.
Yeah, thank you. So, and on that point, when you talk, oh, go on, John.
No, sorry. Trying to put my hand down.
Okay, so that was a quick another question. I only said and. So then if you take on remote access and you look at asset owners' reliance on the control system vendors or a system integrator, there is a massive reliance there on an expert in a known field to be able to fix a problem but not bring a new problem in. So I know from my background when I worked at Emerson, if it wasn't supported, you weren't putting it on your system because we won't support it, which created an issue for the customer of them being stuck between a rock and a hard place. So we work a lot with those industrial control system vendors to remove that. And we work a lot with our customers, either with a partner or directly with the customers, to educate them and showing them how they can strengthen cybersecurity without impacting other areas of their business, i.e. support contracts or service. We know that cyber risk is real for physical systems. There's been a raise in frequency and impact on dollars for OT and IoT. There's that tense geopolitical issue that we have at the moment that was heightening everything. I mean, was it last month where was it the MOD said that they had not a breach, but they knew that somebody from a nation state was on their networks? Ransomware targeting, so that's rised, and cities and smart infra are becoming a target. There's IoT vulnerabilities and cloud connectivity. The easiest way for an IoT device to fix its vulnerability is to just basically end of life it and then bring out the new one that people are going to buy. So don't fix the problem, replace it with a new product that probably has a new problem anyway because it was based on that code. You just fix that code, released it in a new product, and it will create a new problem later on down the line. Issue to you though, as the owner or the designer, that's a cost impact to me. I've either got to find a way of mitigating that impact now or replacing it again that I only just put it in 6 months ago. High return on investment from supply chain attacks. So we've got to look at those supply chains now. Replication through removable media, not meant to be a point that we keep pressing with removable media, by the way. Just happens to be that me and John have touched on the same points. And then you can see there that Windows, everything from the industry, basically they moved to a COT solution, so just straight off the shelf solution, and based everything on Windows. This is why the industry thinks there is security by obscurity, because they don't know our industry. They don't know what we're doing. They don't care what you're doing. They don't care what you're making. They're looking for that vulnerability on that Windows operating system. And if they can connect to it and they can exploit it, they just know you're a bigger payday. That's it. They don't care if you're making aluminium. They don't care if you're no offense, your system is the medical gas system for a hospital. So these are the kind of things where the attacker doesn't really do reconnaissance at a lower level on the areas that they're attacking. They just look for a target that has this known vulnerability and then they will exploit it. So we know those attacks in OT are getting worse, and they have continued to get worse. From the one that we probably all know about, maybe not, is the Stuxnet attack at the Iranian nuclear program in 2010. We've continued, we've seen it go across hydro, hospital drug infusion, so Internet of Medical Devices, manufacturing. We've seen it in an aluminium manufacturer as well, cars, Mawson cores. We've seen it in power grid, and it will continue. It's what are we now going to do to adopt cybersecurity in the same way that we adopted safety or we adopted health and safety? And I've had this conversation previously. I, and probably those in the audience, are a generation who grew up or who had to adapt to health and safety. There is a generation coming that will not want to feel, from a mental health point of view, at risk and bringing their business down from a cybersecurity risk. They should be not only walking into a health and safe environment, they should be walking into a cyber secure environment as well. So that is going to come at some point in time, and I don't know what the trigger is going to be, but it will come. We know that the sorry, go on, John.
I was just going to raise historically, our buildings have been managed by, let's say, a janitor in a brown coat, and he's gone into this digital world with a post-it note on the top left-hand corner of his screen, admin 123. He's into the network. I don't know who's gone into the network, and I've been into schools environments just recently where I could see all the way through to the distributed server architecture, and then get access into, if I wanted, to parent records. So then that opens up, potential breaches and significant fines for that organization. So, we are seeing a change in approach of who needs to gain access into these systems and the approach for management of how those people gain access. So dual identification may well be the safe way of making that approach. I need to know who's in, and I don't want to see a post-it note on the top left-hand corner of the screen saying admin 123. Back to you, Ben.
Thank you. So this slide says the industry has its own issues. This industry isn't any different to any other industry. Building automations, building controls isn't any different to oil and gas, okay? Isn't any different to life sciences. Adapting a cybersecurity maturity journey is a challenge or an issue for every business with operational technology, because you don't know where you are. Some might know where you are, but know that you're going to have an agile approach. Some are ready to start the journey at maybe securing the initial, looking at that segmentation approach, north, south, right off the bat. Let's start with just putting that gap, that barrier, that protection in place between IT and OT. Others might have already started looking at other technology higher up maturity, but actually need to come back a few steps because they should have looked at what they had and where it was before they started anything else. So that adapting approach and that agile approach is an issue in industry that people have got to take on board. We then have business issues, resources, humans. The owners of assets have limited resources who either need to be upskilled on the new tech and subjects, they need to transfer those skills into new areas, and they need to support complex projects whilst they're also doing their day job. Or you need to recruit the SMEs, that's going to be very costly. You've got resource technology. Customers don't want to fix what isn't broken. It's never had an attack. It's never broken down. It's not going to be attacked. They don't want to put the effort into fixing a problem that they don't perceive as there at this moment in time. They also don't want to become guinea pigs. They don't want to be the first attacked, which is then ironic to saying we don't want to fix it knowing that it could be attacked. And they don't want an impact to day-to-day operations. We know it runs. By putting this in, by changing things, it's probably going to impact something that will impact our service. Then there's a complexity. Again, resources. Customers have needs and demands. You have that security operations center integration requirement. Who's going to do it? Who are the right people that I should trust to be able to do this for me? You've then got design assurance. How do we know, not being suitably qualified and experienced in cybersecurity, that we've just signed off something that's right? And then you've got, again, resource technology, where you've got projects but are not the experts that we've touched on, digital transformation, energy optimization, new initiatives. Maybe you're installing solar and connecting it into the building management system, or you're looking at EV charging that points on around your environment. How do we know that these are cyber secure and they can be integrated into our system without bringing risk or opening up new risk? An environment. You have environments that require differing solutions. This then brings complexity, because do we need to look at one solution for here, one solution for there, or do we need to be speaking to somebody like Fortinet around a platform approach that can cover the whole of our network? So I wanted to have a look now at risk to you, the designers and owners, assuming there are designers and owners on the call. Apologies. Smart buildings are driven by control systems and IoT. These existing systems are, as I've said, insecure by design, and were either cybersecurity was never thought of, it was a last thought, or they're only just thinking about it now. When I first came into Fortinet and I walked upstairs, I had to give a presentation to in the first week, a presentation to our health team to try and explain to them where cybersecurity is in health. That was interesting. So the example I gave them was they walk into the office. You walk through a revolving door that is managed and has sensors on it. You then go through a security gate that you use your RFID scan to scan on, and it opens the doors for you. You then go up to a HMI and scan that RFID again To be able to select the floor that you need to go to, you go into a lift. The lift then takes you safely and securely to that floor, opens the door and you come out. Then you put your number into a panel and you walk into the office. All while you've been doing that, you've had a very nice experience because the temperature is right, the lights are on, and so on and so on. Said none of this would happen without OT. It doesn't just happen. So that opened their eyes. And then when we talked about it, we talked about what do these attack areas look like for building control services. So you have elevator systems, commercial boilers, you have power systems, whether that's primary or standby. You have HVACs, building management systems, and air handling units. So what are the risks in this? You can look at BACnet. So if you take a risk in general, BACnet protocol and building control systems are vulnerable to attack. The BACnet protocol can and has been exploited by attackers, and a vulnerability can be used to modify code in BACnet devices. So you go and find that specific risk that's associated to your system. And here's an example. CVE 2018-7276, an issue was discovered on a Lutron Quantum BACnet integration. Sorry, John, if this is one of your pieces of kit, but we all have them. Nobody is immune to vulnerabilities. And if they say they are, it's probably because they're not disclosing them. But there is a risk general. You've now made it specific to your system, and that's the target. The target is the Lutron Siemens BACnet integration. That is a building management system for corporate buildings that Siemens have sold multiple thousands of across the globe. So this isn't just an issue for one person. This is a shared issue for multiple different people. So why is it a cyber risk and an impact for an owner? So as an owner, understanding and mitigating risk, it's a primary function of your role and your day-to-day business. Cybersecurity risk mitigation, in my opinion, is no different. When I came from project and program management, having to do risk mitigation on project deliveries on a day-to-day basis, coming into cybersecurity, it was like something clicked in my head, because it's about looking at risk and then seeing how you can best mitigate it before it becomes an issue. So if you take commercial boiler systems and you put it in a hospitality setting, if the boiler is compromised, you've got no hot water for guests, cleaning and kitchening. That's a risk from cybersecurity to your service. Do it to an elevator system in a hospital or an office. Lift controls compromised, you've got no transport for patients or staff, and the service is restricted. That now is a cyber risk to service and health and safety. You then look at power systems, and as John's given an example already with Mr. Green, you look at Stadia. You get a compromised power system that then maybe extends to a generator set. You now have no building, public or emergency services, potentially, which then is a risk to service, health and safety, and the general public. That's going to be a nightmare for anybody as an owner if that was to happen. But as a designer, understanding and mitigating risk, again, is a primary objective of the delivery of their project. First thing a PM will do is create a risk register, and will then look to manage that. Cybersecurity, again, is no different. Take a HVAC from a designer. Is it a critical service to the business function? Well, if you put this in life sciences, yes, because it's probably providing the clean air to the clean rooms. And if that's compromised, it compromises what's being made in that clean room. In hospitality, it's probably not as much as an issue because it's just a hot room on a hot day for somebody, and you get a few complaints, but you can deal with it. Issue to a designer is if you don't know the environment it's going into and you don't know what it's doing, you've got a risk to your solution now that might be time and cost impact to you. Take a building management system. Is this interconnected to multiple other building automation control systems? Are you now becoming the control system that inherits the risk from other systems? So if you integrate with the existing switchgear or the existing genset, you need to look at how you're going to secure yourself from that existing risk. That's a risk from third parties. Again, it's a cost associated to it. Air handling unit. Is this a remote connection being designed to provide offsite comms to be able to give you service? Did you plan for this? No, so it's a cost again, a risk to commissioning. Commissioning potentially is the most expensive part of a project. So let's look then to try and negate that at some of the best practices. I'm conscious on time. Catherine, am I okay?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, thank you. Any questions at this point, anyone? No? Okay. So let's look at best practice. So how do we start to understand risk or cyber risk? Well, let's go and do a review of people, process, and technology, the security triad. Okay. So before we do any major investments or changes, it's going to be a good idea to start here. Look at that security triad. Look at your reviewing your people around existing organizational countermeasures. What this means is look at your existing processes. Look at your training. Are people suitably qualified? Is somebody in IT able to help somebody in OT to bring their skill set and their expertise into an environment to supplement a deficiency? Look at training then, and let's look at that supply chain. Assessment process. Let's look if we want to start to adhere to a standard specific to operational technology or the environment we operate in. Look again at the existing policies and procedures. Do we have a cybersecurity management system? Pretty sure IT will have one, because if they're ISO accredited 27001 or 9001, they have to have a management system for that. Cybersecurity, it's no different to having a cybersecurity management system, that which tells you what you need to do. And also, do we have a risk assessment? If we don't, should we do one? Should we look at a risk assessment? And then product and technology. Do we have existing technical countermeasures? Do we have antivirus? Do we have switches? Let's look at the versions of them. Let's maybe see if there's any known vulnerabilities. Let's look at the whole existing system. Let's just draw it out and see what it looks like. And you have to do this and keep doing it. It's not just doing it once. It will become a business as usual activity. On that point of standards, my favorite, because I've done training on it, is use an available standard because it is there to be able to help you. 62443 for me is the industry de facto standard on operational technology cybersecurity. Few good points. It's written by industry peers for their industries. It's agnostic. It does not tell you to do A, to do B by vendor C. It's a series of standards advising on the duties of asset owners, the manufacturer, and the maintenance provider. So it's covering the full life cycle of operational technology. It covers 4 principal areas: general, policy and procedures, system, and components. And it provides guidance on best practice in applying cybersecurity for operational technology. So 62443, I'm going to give you a couple of examples of how it is useful. In 3-2, it provides you, the asset owner, or you, the designer, a methodology to evidence posture and maturity. Posture is the perceived approach or attitude to the current position of our system's cybersecurity. So, things that we probably have already got and already done in the business to be able to see where we are for the current posture. An initial system architecture. Oh, it has just started raining for those in the south, in the northwest. Use existing PHAs. Right, does anybody want to have a guess at what a PHA is? No? Okay. It's a process hazard analysis, i.e. a risk assessment around safety. Relevant risk assessments, and then look at your standards and your best practices or your policies, your supplier guarantees that you've already got. 62443 gives you a set of requirements to follow to bring these in to start to be able to deliver an output for you that is cybersecurity focused on that environment. So ZCR1 will help you to understand the system. What is in the boundary of what we're looking at? The delineation of where this system has a responsibility and then who is around it. You'll allow you to perform an initial high-level risk assessment and then partition that system into zones and areas and understand the connections between them, which are called conduits. The output of that will give you a maturity approach. It'll show you evidence and facts of the current cybersecurity of your system. So it'll give you an updated system architecture, it'll give you an initial evaluation of risk, and it'll give you an initial or revised zones and conduits diagram, might possibly to a Purdue reference model. It can also help you support a journey to achieving a security level for that system. So when we've done that, are we happy with our current posture and maturity? Maybe not. So we take those three first stages and we come to a conclusion of a security level target. That security level target, ZCR4, allows us to assess. Are we happy that the initial risk exceeds the tolerable risk? If we're not happy, we follow SLT and go and do a detailed risk assessment on all the areas and looking at what we can do to improve cybersecurity. If we are happy, we document what we've got and we submit it and we're fine with it, and we'll continuously monitor this. But fundamentally, this process is allowing us to document cybersecurity requirements, assumptions, and constraints of what we have got in this environment. So straight away, most people don't like pieces of paper, but you have something that is giving you a set of requirements now that can allow you to go back to the business to say, I'm not happy with the risk that our control systems or our building automation poses to this business. I need to do something to mitigate that risk now. So if we look at best practice in reality, so best practice can be deployed into the projects at the start, middle, end, or ongoing. So if we were to look at this in two ways, new build for an owner, scoping, scope secure by design, develop a cybersecurity requirements for that scope. Delivery as an owner, secure delivery. All I've done here is added secure in front of the terms that are already used in a project. Asked to be showing how the system will be delivered securely so that you're not getting those third-party supply chains issues. Handover. Evidence the requirements to the deliverables for the security achieved. Get them to show you what they've done to the requirements you asked to prove that you're receiving a secure solution. As a designer, security by design. My approach when I was at Emerson, if a customer wasn't talking to me about cybersecurity, I asked them outright, do you want to talk about cybersecurity? Because it was my due diligence to make them aware of their risk and what could come from it. And if they wanted to ignore that, that was on them. But if they wanted to listen and talk about it, that's what I was there for. So as a designer, if it's not included, don't be frightened to ask. Because at the end of the day, it could come to it commercially at the end and they could say, why have you not done anything about cybersecurity? Well, you never asked. Well, you never brought it up. And that's how you get into an issue. Secure delivery, ask to discuss best practice approach for delivering a cybersecure solution. And evidence that if you've got it, because it's a differentiator. And then secure handover. Deliver evidence of security, training for the owner, and the lifecycle cadence. Show them that this now needs to be a part of a business as usual activity. We can offer those as a managed service and so on. So a few basic cyber fundamentals. So let's have a look at assessing risk to apply required mitigations. So as we've said, or as I've said, management of risk is about applying proportionate risk mitigation. And in order to understand risk and mitigation requirements, again, something like 62443-2 and -3 can help support this. So as a very simple approach here, let's look at risk and doing a risk assessment. So risk, building management systems control system enters into a limited or no support status at a vendor and at an operating system application layer. And this has resulted in no patch cycle to protect from 0 days or limited patch availability for the already identified vulnerabilities. We look at our existing risk mitigations and straight away, we've taken 3 of those risk mitigations out and are left just with people. And I don't mean this nastily, but we are the worst defense approach in cybersecurity because we will make mistakes and we will find ways of having shortcuts and bringing those shortcuts in to get a job done. Therefore, it tells us what the required further risk mitigation is. We need to establish a defensible network for OT environments. We then also need to update documentation. Let's use defense in depth. funnily enough, 62443 is the answer for pretty much everything in this presentation. So apologies about that. But in 62443, in the general section, it gives you the definition of what defense in depth is. And it's the provision of multiple security protections, especially in layers, with the intent to delay, if not prevent, the attack. Benefits: attackers are faced with breaking through or bypassing each layer without being detected. A flaw in one layer can be mitigated by the capabilities of others, and a system or system security becomes a set of layers within the overall network. And when you look at defense in depth, please remember the security triad: people, process, technology. So, defense in depth strategy for segmentation. Let's do north-south. Best practice dictates that building management systems should only communicate up and down one level in the Purdue model if required. That's what we've stated. An example: BMS should not be able to talk directly with the corporate network. So by doing this, we implement a north-south segmentation. If we want to then add on to that, we'll look at east-west micro-segmentation. Flat networks are very common in the OT environment, and that provides connectivity and proliferation. So an example: BMS networks can and most commonly are on unmanaged star or bus network configurations, and there's been no security applied. So bringing in that micro segmentation is going to mitigate internal attacks. Another strategy: endpoint protection. So secure endpoints in an OT environment, again, can be difficult, and simple factors such as an OS versioning or multiple solution vendors per asset shouldn't be an issue for you. Reducing the amount of network connections between IT and OT has been started in the segmentation. We're going to make it even more appropriate here by taking those endpoints, consolidating on one platform, putting them into a central location to get updates, and therefore you're removing all those endpoints from connecting to the internet to them going back through your network securely. EDL technology is going to protectively shrink that attack surface. Example again: you've got a range of BMSs or building automation control systems that could all be looking to streamline the endpoint and then bring that down. And then identification. You've got network access control. So in OT environments, asset discovery and identification is a leading need for OT asset owners, either through compliance or requirements or governance, or also best practice. Some people are adopting it. Network access control can do that high level form of asset discovery, and it can also be a part of a zero trust solution that can oversee the protection of all your digital assets connected in your network. So for an example here, a hospital needs to identify what is on their networks. They need visibility to leverage what and where devices are, so i.e. building management systems, HVACs in the network, to understand more about the estate and what they want to do. So by adding network access control, it can passively monitor the network to see what devices are on there from a networking level, and then start to be able to understand what that looks like for you and bring that into you. So just before I end, let's develop and use indicators of good practice. So let's go away from this, look at a standard. Let's start to think about a cybersecurity management system and a risk assessment approach, looking at adopting a defense in depth strategy. Let's clearly define IT and OT networks and assets, clearly define those roles and responsibilities of our resources, look at mapping your system's dependencies, categorize the importance of your system to the business, and involve OT and IT in that cybersecurity maturity journey, because they will both be stronger together than they will be as individuals.
John here.
Me. Thank you.
Sorry. I'd like to add two other points to that. Staff training, in terms of the janitor, we don't want to see issues come around by password sharing, and also reconsider the requirements around disaster recovery, because if all of that is defeated, and best practices will give you the best chance of it not being, how do you recover from that? It could be that the main server just goes down. How do you recover? So disaster recovery needs to be in that as well.
Can't have everything on there, John.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks, John. We've got a hand up, Brad.
Yeah, so the client we work with use the 802.1x. So can you hear me?
I'm
Struggling.
For me, I'm struggling, Bradley. Sorry.
You want to write it in the chat? That's better.
Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yes, that's better.
So the client we work with use 802.1x for the security on the devices. Do you know what standard that falls under? It's all a bit new to us, so we're unsure.
802.1x, that's an IT, predominantly IT, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's a secure device end to end, really. So on the devices, we'll have a password certificate.
Yeah.
They'll then apply it using Forescout.
So if you go back to 62443, and if you look at security level 2, what they're that's only at that point where they start to talk about end-to-end encryption and putting encryption on networks. They don't explicitly state what level of encryption. They are looking for you to go out there and see if you can provide encryption that will meet the foundational requirements and the enhanced requirements. So if 8021.x is that solution for that environment to protect end-to-end security and it will work in that environment, it ticks the box.
That's the other problem, is that so many devices and vendors don't support it.
Exactly. And this is the challenge now of having a cybersecurity greenfield versus a brownfield site.
Yeah.
Brownfields are horrible. I know some Emerson customers that I worked with who wanted to go to this new world of encryption across Delta V. I was glad I left when I was going to have to tell them that they'd have to replace all their hardware because the hardware they have doesn't support encryption at a fundamental level. And in order to get it, you need to change your hardware devices. Again, this is why we have to be agile. We have to have a journey and understand what we're going to do. And for those that are new, we can implement secure by design. And that those then that we start to replace, we look at the defense in depth that we can apply to them now and how we can incorporate them in the future when it's their time to retire and be replaced by something else.
See, that is a major problem. I was speaking to someone yesterday from the States about it, and he's doing a big data center, and all the generators have been spec'd for Caterpillar.
Yeah.
And they have the worst hardware for integration. The most sort of everything's outdated. There's no secure protocols or anything, but they're considered one of the best generators in the world. So
what you just very simply on that, you could put a firewall in front of that generator and then create your IPsec VPN tunnel from that firewall to another firewall. So their deficiency doesn't need to be the problem. You can layer on that without any issue and just put that security between them. So you make that secure conduit between those zones. So that protocol can still go through that secure tunnel and can come out the other end. And what you're saying is the customer has to accept the risk that they're going to have to probably put some physical organizational countermeasures in place because they can't put technology on the assets. But the technology will be used for the conduit, and we will then harden what is in the BMS or what is in the central location.
That's exactly what they're worried about. I mean, it's very highly unlikely, but someone can easily just plug into it locally and shut down generators.
So if you want any help with that, reach out to me and we can have a chat about it.
All right, thanks.
Any other questions?
Greg, Simon, anybody?
No, I'm all good, thanks.
Yeah, no, I'm good. Good, thanks. It was just a bit of a learning curve, very
bit
heavy on the acronyms, so I've got to figure all of them out. But I'll probably reread the notes and stuff again, I think, afterwards. But
we've got enough in BMS anyway, haven't we?
Yeah, exactly.
We've probably stolen a few anyway.
Yeah.
It's where one industry uses another acronym, which means something else and something else.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've
for me, a lot of the security issues we do need to, heavily also focus on the legacy part of this. So assessments
absolutely.
need to be ongoing. The review of training for staff needs to be ongoing. The review of these maintenance elements needs to be ongoing. These threats will not be the same tomorrow as they are today. So, this is an evolving area. If we look at things like firewalls, the best ones are now network connected. They are using algorithms and cognitive AI to prevent and stop these attacks. So there's a huge amount happening from the OEM part of the industry to protect you. And I thought no better company to bring into this conversation from a OEM supplier. But the journey is, there's design elements that we need to take into account. There's maintenance elements we need to take into account, and training elements. So the landscape is complicated, but we will see more and more applications end up in our space because you've got a part of your supply chain that's providing you one set of the componentry that you also need to take responsibility for. And any last words or comments?
Thank you for listening to me.
Thanks.
Well, if you haven't got any other further questions,
Thanks, John. Appreciate the information.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. Thank you ever so much, Ben and John, for giving up your time. And thanks to everyone for joining us. I mentioned that we'll be putting the slide decks and this recording on the members area. So I'll send you a link so that you can access that and download it. John, Ben, I don't know whether there is a very quick acronym crib sheet that you can add maybe to your slide deck just to help people out. That would be really useful.
I think that the biggest journey a lot of companies face when talking to the end client is the maturity of OT, operational technology, is not understood by IT departments. Even though we will share more and more of the ICT space, the information communication transport layer, we share that space. And currently, in most clients, it's owned by the IT department. We need to get their buy-in more and more into this journey because we potentially, we have a risk, but they also have a risk to us.
Just ask them if they want to own the risk. They'll say no, and then you've got your answer.
What we are hoping to do is to deliver more of these. So if there's any further information on cybersecurity that would be useful, we're always happy to put on another webinar, sort of taking it to the next stage. Or if you have feedback from today and said you'd have liked, a little bit more information on part of it, just let us know. Equally, if there's any other subjects that you'd like us to cover, again, just drop me a note. That would be great. We can continue the discussion through the forum, through the members platform on a thread. So if anybody's got any questions, you can do that and we can pass those out to John, Ben and other experts to be able to help as well. But thank you very much. Thanks to everybody for their time in joining today, and hopefully it's been beneficial.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Ben, many thanks
Thanks
indeed.
a lot, guys.
Thank you.
Cheers now.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.